The music pulsed through the house, a relentless beat that made the walls tremble. Laughter and chatter wove through the air as guests mingled, glasses clinking in celebration. I stood near the edge of the living room, sipping a drink that had long gone flat, scanning the crowd for my wife Emma. She'd disappeared a while ago, and I hadn't seen her since. Something felt off. I couldn't pinpoint it, but the nagging feeling in my gut told me to find her. We'd come to this party together, hosted by an old friend of hers. She was supposed to introduce me to a few of her colleagues, yet here I was alone, dodging stranger small talk. I weaved through the crowd, nodding politely at acquaintances and dodging tipsy revelers. That's when I saw her. Emma was in the dimly lit corner of the patio, leaning too close to someone I didn't recognize, a man with an easy smile and a hand resting on her waist. The sight stopped me cold. She wasn't just chatting with him. Her laughter was too warm, her touch on his arm too familiar. The way she tilted her head, the subtle arch of her body toward his. It was a language I knew too well. It was how she used to look at me. For a moment, I thought I'd misread the situation. Maybe it was innocent, just harmless flirting. But then he leaned in, whispered something in her ear, and she laughed again, her hand brushing his chest. My stomach twisted. I felt my grip tighten around the glass in my hand. The noise of the party faded into the background, a dull hum against the pounding in my chest. I wanted to march over there, demand an explanation, confront them both. But I didn't. Instead, I turned and walked away. I left the patio, moved past the crowd, and set my empty glass on a table. My footsteps carried me out the front door, the cool night air hitting me like a slap. I couldn't stay. Not like this. I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe through the storm inside me. 100 thoughts ran through my mind: anger, betrayal, confusion. But above all, I felt a deep, aching sadness. The woman I thought I knew, the relationship I thought we had, suddenly felt like a lie. After a while, my phone buzzed. It was Emma. A text. "Where are you? I've been looking for you." I didn't reply. Instead, I stared at the glowing screen, wondering how much of her looking for me was genuine. Minutes later, she came outside, scanning the driveway until she spotted me in the car. Her expression was a mix of confusion and irritation as she walked toward me. She opened the door and slid into the passenger seat. "What's going on? Why did you leave without telling me?" Her voice carried a defensive edge, but I didn't take the bait. I met her gaze, silent, waiting for her to speak first. Her face faltered. "What?" she asked, her tone softer now. "Did something happen?" I finally broke the silence. "I saw you." Her eyes widened, and for a brief moment, guilt flashed across her face before she masked it with indignation. "Saw me what? Talking to a friend? You're overreacting." I let her words hang in the air, watching as she squirmed under my gaze. She tried to laugh it off, but the tension between us was palpable. "Emma," I said quietly, "don't. Just don't." Her facade crumbled, and she looked away, biting her lip. "It wasn't what it looked like," she whispered, but we both knew it was. The drive home was silent. She didn't try to explain further, and I didn't push. The party, her laughter, the man's hand on her waist. It replayed in my mind like a haunting reel. That night, as we lay in bed, the distance between us felt like an ocean. She reached for me, but I turned away, unable to bridge the gap. Caught red-handed, her reaction had been predictable, a mix of denial and deflection. But the silence that followed spoke louder than any words ever could. The days after the party were a blur of strange silences and heavy tension. Emma tried to carry on as if nothing had happened, filling the space between us with forced small talk and empty gestures of normalcy. But I could feel the weight of her guilt in every glance she avoided and every word she left unsaid. I wasn't ready to confront her again, not yet. I needed time to think, to process what I'd seen, and what it meant for us. Did I want to fight for our marriage, or had something irreparable cracked that night on the patio? One evening, about a week later, she came home from work earlier than usual. I was in the kitchen, staring blankly at a cup of coffee that had gone cold. She walked in and hesitated at the doorway, her usual confidence replaced by an almost timid energy. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. I nodded, gesturing for her to sit across from me. She didn't. Instead, she paced the kitchen, wringing her hands. It was a habit of hers when she was nervous, one I used to find endearing. Now, it just felt like a tell. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began, her voice shaky. "About that night at the party." I didn't respond, waiting for her to continue. She stopped pacing and looked at me, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. "I need to be honest with you." The room seemed to shrink as my chest tightened. I braced myself for what was coming. "What you saw, it wasn't innocent," she admitted, her voice breaking. I didn't plan for it to happen. I don't even know why I let it get that far. But it was stupid, and it was wrong, and I hate myself for it." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My stomach churned, and I felt an ache I hadn't thought could go any deeper. "Did you sleep with him?" I asked bluntly, my voice colder than I expected. She flinched as if I'd struck her. "No, I swear, it never got that far. It was just flirting. And I know that's bad enough, but I stopped it before it went anywhere." I studied her face, searching for the truth. She looked sincere, but my trust in her had been shaken to its core. "Why?" I asked after a long pause. "Why would you do that to us?" Her tears fell freely now. "I don't know. I was stupid and selfish. I guess I felt disconnected, like we've been drifting apart lately, and I didn't know how to fix it. I made the worst possible choice, and I hate myself for it." I leaned back in my chair, the weight of her confession pressing down on me. Part of me wanted to believe her, to take her words at face value and begin piecing us back together. But another part, the part still reeling from the betrayal, couldn't let go of the hurt. "Disconnected?" I repeated, my voice sharp. "And instead of talking to me about it, you let some guy put his hands on you?" She looked at me, pleading. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I want to fix this, if you'll let me. Please, just tell me what I can do." I shook my head, feeling a storm of emotions I couldn't put into words. "I don't know, Emma. I don't know if I can forgive this. I don't know if I want to." Her face crumpled, and she sank into the chair across from me, her head in her hands. For the first time in years, she looked utterly broken. But I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. "Not yet. I need time," I said finally, standing up and walking toward the door. "I can't give you an answer right now." As I left the room, I heard her muffled sobs, but I didn't turn back. This wasn't just about her mistake. It was about the foundation of trust we'd built together, now cracked and crumbling. Whether or not it could be repaired was a question I didn't yet have the strength to answer. The days that followed were an emotional minefield. Emma gave me space, honoring my request, but the weight of her presence lingered in the house. We coexisted in an uneasy silence, exchanging only the bare minimum of words. Every time I looked at her, I could see the remorse etched into her face, but it wasn't enough to erase the image of her with that man on the patio. At night, I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts spinning in endless circles. I replayed her confession, her tears, her pleas for forgiveness. I thought about the good times we'd shared, the years of laughter, love, and partnership that had brought us to this point. Was it fair to let one mistake overshadow everything we'd built? Or was this mistake a sign that something deeper was broken between us? One evening, a week later, I decided I needed clarity. I asked Emma to sit down with me in the living room. She looked apprehensive, her hands fidgeting nervously in her lap as she perched on the edge of the couch. "I've been thinking," I began, my voice steady but heavy, "about us. About what happened, she nodded silently, her eyes searching mine for some hint of where the conversation was headed. I need to understand, I continued. What made you feel disconnected? What was it that pushed you to him? Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time she didn't break down. Instead, she took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. I've been feeling lost, she admitted, not just in our relationship, but in myself. Work has been overwhelming, and I've been so caught up in everything else that I didn't realize how distant we'd become. And when I noticed it, I didn't know how to bring it up without making it worse. She hesitated, her voice trembling as she added, "When he gave me attention, it felt easy, like an escape. It wasn't real, and I knew that. But for a moment, it was a distraction from everything I've been feeling. I wasn't thinking about the damage it could cause. I wasn't thinking at all. I let her words sink in, trying to see past my anger to the pain and insecurity that had driven her actions. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but it gave me a glimpse into the person behind the mistake, the woman I'd fallen in love with, now struggling to make sense of her own feelings. I'm not perfect either, I admitted after a long pause. I've been so focused on work and other things that I didn't see how much you were hurting. Maybe I didn't want to see it, but that doesn't mean I can just forget what happened." Her voice cracked as she said, "I don't want you to forget. I just want a chance to make things right, to prove to you that I can do better, that we can do better." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of the conversation settling around us. For the first time since the party, I felt a glimmer of something I couldn't quite name. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a step toward understanding. "I'm not ready to forgive you," I said finally, meeting her tearful gaze. "But I'm not ready to give up on us either. If we're going to try, it's going to take work, real work, and it's going to take time." Relief washed over her face, though it was tempered by the gravity of my words. "I'll do whatever it takes," she promised. "Just tell me where to start." "I don't have all the answers," I admitted, "but we need to start by being honest, with each other and with ourselves. No more hiding, no more pretending. If we're going to fix this, we have to face it head on." She nodded, her expression determined. "I'm in." It wasn't a resolution, and it wasn't a clean slate, but it was a beginning, a fragile, tentative step toward rebuilding what had been broken. Whether or not we would succeed was a question only time could answer. But for now, it was enough to know that we were willing to try.